Hi, everybody. Welcome. I'm Pam Shigell. I'm full-time faculty in the School of Social Work, and this is my 5th year. I teach in the MSW program, and my interests are in self-care and well-being of practitioners, and I'm also a clinical social worker. And we'll talk about the study in a minute, but I'll let my colleague introduce herself.
Hello, I'm Taylor Hall. I'm an assistant professor in the School of Social Work, finishing up my 4th year. I teach in the policy and human behavior tracks and some specialized courses on substance use and mental health. And I work with Pam on this study.
Great. All right, we're going to share some slides here. And here we go. So we're going to be talking about the well-being needs and priorities of helping professionals, specifically looking at social work students getting ready to start their careers. So just a little bit of background information in general about social work, and I think this is also relatable to a variety of helping professionals, and then we'll talk more specifically about our students. So social workers provide most of the mental health care in the US for less compensation and social status than other related professions. About 75% of us will experience workplace burnout in our careers. As a result of this kind of stress and burnout, often the average social work career is 8 years in comparison with other careers like physicians who last usually about 25 years in their field. We know that burnout is correlated with a decrease in mental health functioning. And there is a very desperate need for us to be having honest conversations about the impact of our work and how it impacts our ability to sustain ourselves in the profession. Just a few terms which are related to what we're going to talk about today. First of all, burnout is something that tends to develop over a period of time. It's related to a variety of workplace-related tasks and stressors, things like too much paperwork, not enough time, too many clients, longer hours, not for more compensation, things like that. It can lead to symptoms such as depression, cynicism, burden, and loss of compassion. Secondary traumatic stress is something that can occur more suddenly for working practitioners and can be related to directly witnessing or hearing about the traumas of other people. We can then start to mirror the symptoms of PTSD. And if we have our own histories of PTSD, it's usually more often the case than we will experience secondary traumatic stress more often in our work. Compassion fatigue is known as the cumulative cost of caring, which can encompass both burnout and secondary traumatic stress. There's a lot of variables to look at when it comes to compassion fatigue. So, for example, if someone is a new professional who's working with traumatized kids, and that person, the professional, is also high on the empathy scale, their risk for compassion fatigue might be more so than someone who's a seasoned professional who is maybe not working with such a traumatized population and who's had some experience working through these kinds of feelings and sensations before. So there's a lot of different variables involved. But the main symptoms of compassion fatigue have to do with really being very fearful and avoidant of work. So when things get, when compassion fatigue sets in, people tend to take their work home and then they get very nervous of getting back there the next day and starting over. They start to really feel a lot of panic and fear about that. They have preoccupation with clients and their work. And then generally their capacity to bear the traumas of others is greatly reduced. And the other more everyday practice things that we deal with are things like vicarious trauma, when someone's telling you a trauma story and you're kind of feeling the sensations of that in your own body. And then also countertransference, which is more of an unconscious thing happening between two people where we bring our own past experiences into our work and those get triggered. So hopefully if we don't have burnout or compassion fatigue, we're more easily able to shake off those everyday practice experiences. But just keeping these in here to say that we deal with a lot in our work, and we want to be able to keep ourselves healthy and well. One of the reasons we are talking about self-care and well-being more in the School of Social Work here at Bridgewater State is that we've had some recent changes in our ethics code as of 2021, which has included more language about self-care. So for example, one change is a statement here: social work organizations, agencies, and educational institutions are encouraged to promote organizational policies, practices, and materials to support social workers' self-care. So we have like an ethical responsibility now is written in our code. This isn't a specific principle or standard, but it is some new language for us. And then this other language here, which is part of another ethical principle, says that social workers should take measure to care for themselves professionally and personally. So as many of you are experiencing in your own department, students in the wake of a pandemic are experiencing heightened amount of stress and anxiety and depression. That's like across the board in US colleges and universities. This is especially the case for students who are preparing for fields in the helping professions, and education too would be one of those: nursing, psychology, people who have to often simultaneously deal with their own experiences of trauma and stress while helping others get through that as a practitioner. So we are seeing more and more issues with our own students, and we want to help them out. And so part of the study that we've been doing for 3 years, which Taylor will tell you more about, has to do with our interest in understanding more the nature of their stress and where that's coming from, and then hopefully using that data to better build practices and courses and other programs to help them with their experiences of stress and other mental health issues.
Great, thanks, Pam. So as Pam had started to talk about, we have this study, which is called the School of Social Work Wellness Study. And I started in the School of Social Work full-time in the fall of 2019. Talked with Pam. Pam was sharing her interests and professional activity in wellness. And we were also talking about the fact that we felt that students' wellness needs around mental health and just, like housing, well-being, anxiety, and stress, that their needs were sort of accelerating, and that we were really noticing in our department specifically that we didn't necessarily have structures or policies or things sort of built into the way that we were functioning to help to address these student needs. And so as a first step, we were thinking, why don't we create this study or this survey that we can send out semesterly? So at the end of each semester, starting in the spring of 2020, and we didn't know obviously at the time what was going to happen in the spring of 2020, but starting semesterly to just see like, who are our students? So some basic demographic information: gender, age, race and ethnicity, sexual orientation, enrollment status, are you full or part-time, veteran status, parent status, first generation college student status. We wanted to look at their mental health. Specifically, we use the DASS, the Depression, Anxiety, and Stress Scale. We also ask for adverse childhood experiences and provide a score on that as well as just overall well-being needs. So we're asking our students semesterly to rank high priority, medium priority, or low priority for these 6 different types of well-being needs: emotional, physical, spiritual, social, occupational, and intellectual. And the goal of this was to have some data, obviously, to support what we were feeling and what we were sort of experiencing with our students, but then to also have data to move us forward in terms of creating new structures and new ways to, as Pam had shared, address these new facets of our ethical code that are around self-care and wellness. One of the things that's new and upcoming that we're excited to share data about in the fall is a photo voice component. So we've been we've been collecting data through this qualitative and quantitative study over the last 6 semesters, but now we're going to incorporate a new component of Photo Voice, which is where students are able to take pictures of their wellness, what they describe to be as wellness, and then pictures of what barriers they have to wellness, and then write little blurbs in their own words about what that represents for them. So we're hoping to have just add another layer of understanding to what our students have going on. So I want to start by sharing our sample demographics. So at this point, over the course of the 6 semesters, we've collected 326 unique surveys. In terms of the number of BSW or MSW students that are taking part, it's about half, right? So a few more BSW students have participated in the program than MSW students, a little over 51% versus 48%. The majority of the students who took the survey, and this is representative of who we have in the department as well, 85% identify as female, about a little over 10% identify as male, and about 3.5% identify as trans, queer, or non-binary. The average age in the School of Social Work is a little under 30 years old, which we're so interested, I think, after looking at this data to see like what's different about other departments. Is this something that's sort of specific to social work? While we're moving away from this term non-traditional college student, because we want everyone to feel accepted and traditional as a college student. This is certainly older than what we would think of as typical college age, which is anywhere from like 18 to 22, 24. In terms of race and ethnicity, again, this is representative of what we have in the department for the most part, though we do see a trend of students of color not partaking in the survey as high as a rate of our white students. So about 83% of the survey identifies as white, a little over 10% identify as Black, about 7.5% identify as Latinx, a little over 5% identify as multiracial. About a third of our students say that they're part of the LGBTQIA community. About 41% of our students are employed full-time. I didn't make note of this in here, but about the same percent are employed part-time. So over 80% of our students are working at least, anywhere between part-time to full-time hours in a week. The average household income for our students is about $44,000 a year. For a family of 4, this is considered to be above the federal poverty line, but clearly this is still considered to be working class. These are not students who are coming from, for the most part, homes where they're able to make ends meet very easily every month. That financial struggles are part of the experience. And lastly, almost half of our students, 43.5%, identify as first gen, which means they'll be the first people in their family to complete a college degree. So in terms of our health and wellness data, this is, this aligns more, I think, with our goals of the study. It's good to know who we have, but this is also sort of another layer of what we were hoping to understand. About 1 in 5 of our students say they have a chronic physical health condition, and that's about the same for a history of substance misuse. About 1 in 5 of our students in the School of Social Work have a history of substance misuse. If you're looking at mental health conditions, over half of our students in the School of Social Work report that they have a chronic mental health condition. If we're thinking about how they rate either their physical or mental health, the vast majority of folks rate their physical health to be good, followed by average, followed by poor, followed by excellent. And in terms of overall mental health, the majority rate their overall mental health as average, followed by good, followed by poor, followed by terrible, then followed by excellent. So excellent is the least reported response for both overall physical health and overall mental health of our students. I talked earlier about adverse childhood experiences. So this is a scale of 1 to 10. So when you take this survey, you're sort of insinuating yes or no, have these things happened to you? And it's a whole host of questions on neglect, abuse, financial insecurity. Do you have people in your family who've been incarcerated, that have mental health issues, that have substance use issues, excuse me. And it's considered that anything over 4 out of that 10 puts you at a higher risk of health issues later on in life. And so our students have an average of 4.7 ACEs, which means almost half of the ACEs they are saying that they've experienced. Lastly, for the wellness priorities, this is ranked in terms of how students have, ranked their wellness priorities. That on average, students rank emotional wellness as their top priority, followed by occupational, intellectual, social, physical, and lastly, spiritual. So it ranges from a high of 73.5% of our students saying emotional wellness is their highest priority to a low of about 40% of our students that say spiritual wellness is a high priority for them. Lastly, I wanted to share the data from the DASS, the Depression, Anxiety, and Stress Scale. And again, we measure all of this semesterly, but this is one of the things that we were really hoping to track over time. And so you're seeing each of these 6 semesters that we've collected data and the average score for depression, anxiety, and stress of our students. So across all semesters, depression is in the mild to moderate range. Across all semesters, stress is in the mild range, and anxiety is in the moderate to severe range across all semesters. So you're seeing here the spring of 2021, we see an increase in actually depression, anxiety, and stress for all students. Like it seems to peak in the spring of 2021. And we were sort of talking about like why, May of 2021 seems to be this peak. And that was the end of a year of online learning for our students here. And so we're sort of thinking, maybe students were just sort of at an all-time high in terms of their stress, anxiety, and depression, but it is the first semester where we collected data where a score is actually considered to be in the severe level. And we've got the scoring over here on the right-hand side.
Yeah, I know we'd also talked too about like, is this also maybe related to increase in loss of people losing loved ones during the pandemic and then having less social support and connection to help them through because people couldn't see each other in person as much. They weren't getting the camaraderie of their classmates in the classroom, things like that. I mean, there's a lot of potential things contributing, but it's an interesting trend. And then depression. Did we talk about depression? I
And
just cut you off there.
That's okay. No, that's okay. Depression,
Mhm.
again, peaks in the spring of 2021 and has sort of been going down or holding steady. But, surprisingly, some of the higher scores, again, were at the start of the pandemic, that first semester after 1 year, and then things have started to level out after the spring of 2021.
Great. So we've been, developing this, greater context and understanding for what our students are going through. And then our next step is sort of like, what do we do with this information? We plan to keep collecting the data and keeping track and maybe adding some, new variables into the mix. In addition, looking at some other facets of wellness and well-being as we go forward. But, what do we need to do from here? Certainly in our own field, and we suspect in many other fields across campus too, we need to do more research on the wellness needs and realities of our students, because obviously, we do know that things like, depression will impact people's ability to function in their careers and within other domains of their life. So it's really important, especially for a university, to take a look at that. We in the School of Social Work are trying to integrate more coursework on areas of burnout, self-care, and wellness. My colleague has a burnout course that she teaches. I teach a well-being, a mind, body, spirit, well-being, and self-care course to MSW students. It's been offered over the summer for the last 3 years. But we would also like to see more of this content come in other classes, even in the form of, practice courses, talking more about self-care, also policy courses, talking about organizations, agencies, policies, surrounding the social work community, ways to pay more attention to our own health and well-being. This also impacts our students all do internships. So in terms of who supervises them, how they're supervised, the attention to that person's well-being and what they need so they can be a productive and empathetic practitioner when they go into their agencies is really important. So this is also a field placement issue for us. Then our field department is kind of another entity within the School of Social Work. We want to see more, continued changes, maybe increased language around self-care in our ethics code, certainly putting more responsibility on the systems of care themselves, rather than leaving this up to individuals to fend for themselves. A lot of our students have had their own experiences of trauma. Some are from marginalized communities, and asking, people of color who've been marginalized, for example, to kind of be the pillars of their community and also deal with all the stresses that they're dealing with every day, and then spend hours, taking care of themselves, using that money and those resources doing that is just at some point, it's just quite a tall ask for people. So we want to see systems better taking care of the people who are working within them. But we also want to continue to have these conversations within the School of Social Work and also within the Bridgewater State community, because we all need to take a look at ourselves and also how our students are doing. It's kind of the obvious thing and sometimes the pink elephant in the room. So part of doing this for CARS is just kind of getting the word out about the study and hopefully inviting you all to talk with us, reach out to us, and collaborate with us. Perhaps there's ways to do this study in other departments too. Taylor, if you want to add anything to that.
No, that's great. I mean, I think, like you said, we want to create a culture in an institution where students don't feel like the brunt of this wellness work or self-care work is just on them in their free time, because as we're seeing, like, there's not a lot of free time. And so if we don't create a culture where this is normalized and a part of what we do at the institution, then how are we taking care of our students and how are we modeling for them what can and should be happening as they go out into the workforce?
Great. So that's all we have for today, but reach out to us and enjoy the rest of the May celebration, and we will see you around.